gotta get out of here so I can save our family from this poverty. And when I make my money, I'll send it back to you. Father, give me strength, I pray. I have to end this misery. It's causing too much pain. I'm gonna look for richer lands where the money's made. I'm gonna put my whole world in your hands. I have to put my whole world in your hands. In your hands. Mister, please let me work somehow. You've kept me waiting 18 months, and still I'm not
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Responsive Weekly Discussion. I was absent last week. Megan held down the show with two of our other friends, Brian and Scott. Megan, how'd last week go?
Well, I had a great time. It was really nice to talk with both Brian and Scott and get their perspectives on donor love, and especially to see in our chat what people were up to, how they're engaging with and appreciating their donors. It was a great time, but we missed you, Noah. We always do.
That's very kind. I'm sure everything was fine. I know we had a stellar turnout. I think it was the biggest ever last week. So grateful for everyone that continues to show up every Thursday to have these conversations. We really want this to be an environment where you come every Thursday. It's the best 30 minutes of your week where you can connect with like-minded fundraisers that are thinking about how to go forward. And we're excited because we're going to keep doing that today. And we have a special guest, Stephen. I always mess up your last name, Stephen. Stephen
Boudreau.
Stephen is the co-founder of Raised Donors. And I guess it was back in November or December of last year, Virtuous actually acquired Raised Donors, and now Raised Donors is part of our team and our suite of fundraising platforms here. So I've had the pleasure of getting to know Stephen for a long time, but we wanted to bring Stephen on because he spent, I don't know, the last 10, 20 years thinking about how do you create a incredible online giving experience. And that's what we're going to get into today. So thanks for joining, Stephen.
Well, it's my pleasure. Not only am I happy to be here as a guest, I'm happy to be here every week as a listener. So.
Yeah, I will say we were joking before we went on the air about Stephen's audience participation, but now he's on the stage and he got a little bit of taste of the behind the scenes shenanigans that happens before we go live each week. We're grateful to have you, Stephen. And hey, let's get started. We want to talk about what makes a great donation page. So I'm going to kick this question over to you, Stephen. What makes a great donation page?
Well, that is a loaded question, especially when you ask somebody in software to answer it. But I think I'm going to surprise you just a little that the technology, the process, that's only half of the equation. Really, when you think about making a donation page better or optimizing a donation page, you really start with two key variables. First is the value proposition, and the second is friction. And so they're very tightly wound together. So if you come into Raised Donors and you sign up for a form, you're not instantly going to start raising more money. You'll probably instantly have a better experience. But I really think that you start with the value proposition. And when I talk about the value proposition, I'm talking about why should I give to your organization? Why should I not give to your organization? Why should I do that right now? Like, these are the things that we're thinking about. And so it really starts with empathy. We talk about this, the three of us at work all the time. Just this idea of trying to see the page through the eyes of your donor. because the donation page isn't for you. You're not the one making the gift, you're the one asking for the gift. So the more you can put yourself on the other side of the equation, the better. And really, one of the mistakes I see a lot of nonprofits make is they think of giving as a binary process, which it isn't. It's not give or not give. We're making a series of decisions. So when you think about optimization, you're not optimizing a page, you're optimizing the mind, you're optimizing thought sequences. Because as a donor, I'm coming in and everything that I'm doing is a micro decision. It's not one big, yes, I'm making a gift. It's, yeah, I'll give you my first name. Yeah, I'll give you my credit card information. Why do you need my birthday? Why are you asking for a photo? Like, you're introducing friction, and everything you ask for is some degree of friction, and some friction is okay. But it's these micro decisions, and every one of those decisions, whether we realize it or not, subconsciously we're weighing the value versus the cost. What am I having to give, and how much is it costing me? How much anxiety am I feeling when you ask me these questions? So really, the tool that a marketer, that a fundraiser has is their message. That's the thing that you have. And so in order to present that value proposition, you have to use words. You have to craft a message that speaks to the donor. I'll pause there because this is an area where I could probably go into many, many different thoughts. But does that make sense? This is what I'm saying, kind of connecting with what we typically think about when we talk about donation pages. No, it's frozen.
Well, if I'm not, I'll say yes. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it's easy to get really focused on the technology of a donation form, to think like, how do we make the money go into the account in the way? And okay, if we can do that, we're good. And then forget that like this is a series of decisions, and this is a step of trust that you're asking of your donors. I think thinking of it from their perspective is really important.
Yeah, well, what we have is, if you want to think of a little formula, it's a good message plus a simple process. That's how you start getting to those micro yes, 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 to the big yes. Now, to get a little more specific, when you think about a value proposition, and I didn't come up with this, our friends over the Next After Institute have kind of this way of thinking about how you craft a value proposition, and that's where you answer the question, if I am a donor, or if I'm your donor, why should I give to you rather than some other organization, or not at all? And so just thinking through that question is an important process. And that's going back to the empathy. Have empathy with yourself too, because the goal when you're optimizing a donation page is not perfection. It's not possible. You can't have a perfect value proposition. You can't have a perfect donation page. All you can do is learn and grow and improve. Because a lot of times people ask me, oh, what's a good conversion rate? Is it 2%? Is it 20%? Is it 100%? I always say a good conversion rate is an improving one. And so even if it dips, hopefully you learn something. And so you're constantly kind of growing and improving. But as you think about those things, there's kind of 5 key ways to think about the levers you can pull to improve your value proposition. Again, I didn't come up with this. I've only learned this over the years. And so if you think about those levers, you have appeal. So is it appealing? Do I want to give to you? Is it appealing? So 2, exclusivity. Can I get this somewhere else? Can I go to someone else and they do it better? Is there some reason I would give to you rather than someone else? The 3rd, and I think the most important, is clarity. Is it clear? Does it make sense to me? I think a lot of organizations get caught up with being persuasive or clever. But in an age when we have so much data and so much being presented to us, clarity is persuasion. You got to be clear. The moment that's friction. If I don't understand what's happening, if I have a complicated form, if I don't know why I should give you clarity is, and then the last one is credibility. Why do I trust you? Should I give to you? Like, why would I do this? And so that's where you kind of bridge that trust, that gap between a donor and an organization, is that credibility. So that's a lot. It's a mouthful, but those are kind of key points that you want to consider as you're kind of crafting that value proposition. Now, the other thing I mentioned was friction. And so friction comes in all different forms. We'll focus on a few today, especially when we're looking at people's forms and evaluating what we think, how they can be improved. But if you want to put friction into kind of 7 different categories, you've got field number friction. So just why there's so many fields. Why does this feel so hard? Field layout, form error. So if something bad happens, how is it being presented to me? Confusion. Then we're going back to clarity. That'll be one we talk about today. Decision friction. should I do this? Should I not do this? Device friction. Does this look like garbage on a mobile device or an iPad or a laptop, whatever? And then steps friction. Does this feel long? Does this feel too confusing? So those are the best ways I can categorize the different types of friction. I think the most apparent, the easiest to address, and where you can get a lot of value and wins on improving your form right away are field number friction and confusion friction. So I think when we look at forms and processes today, those will be some of the easier things we can look at. Noah had asked me to kind of come up with maybe 3 little bullet points that people can take away. Some tips that right away you can do to improve your donation form. One thing to do is you want to remove multiple calls to action and exit points. So if you go to a donation form and you have your main site navigation on the sidebar, you have like, hey, download our latest research study, go to our Facebook page. These are all exit points, so that would be number one. That's super easy hanging fruit. I'm sure some of the pages we'll look at today have that because it's just common. It's the easy way. Let me embed my form or let me do this and we're off. Okay, well, we can improve. We can always improve. Number 2 is make sure you use words. Don't just have the form. When someone lands on a page, you can't assume, all right, here's my money, goodbye. Like that value proposition is key. Even if it's just a sentence, that helps, but I would encourage you, use the words. Don't be afraid of people not wanting to read, because even though you think that may be the case, the evidence points to the contrary. If you look at the research and the experiments that have been done over and over by groups like Next After, people need to understand why they should give to you, and the way they do that is with words. Side tip, videos usually are not a good idea on a page, a donation page that is. They can be used very effectively for storytelling and maybe the lead up to the donation form. But the reason the videos often fail is because they're not scannable. So people want to look and maybe not read every single word, but get an idea. In a video, you have to engage with it. And then now we're kind of losing a little bit of the control over the process. And then the last thing is what I've already said, and that's be clear. Clarity is your secret weapon. And that's not just in your value proposition, that's in how you ask for things on your form. So that's my spiel. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's awesome. I think we could just end the call there. I think we've done enough. We've done enough. There was so much brilliance in there, but I think it's going to be more apparent to our audience when we actually look at pages. So I think we should just dive in and take a look at some of the donation pages that many of you bravely submitted to us this week. And I say bravely because it takes a lot to respond to an email from Megan or from Noah and saying, here's my donation page. Like, I have no idea what you guys are going to do with it, but give us some feedback. So grateful for you submitting those pages. So let's take a look. Let me get my screen share up here. We're going to start with one that the person that submitted this was already pretty vulnerable in their email. And so I did want to start here. Megan and Stephen, can you all see the donation pages okay?
Yes, I can now.
Perfect.
Yes.
So I'm going to call him out because I saw him in the chat earlier, but Brian, I think it's Brian, submitted his organization, Rankin Technical College. And the one thing that's really interesting about this is that they have a beautiful brand. They have a beautiful website. It really comes across in that way. But the one thing I want to point out here, and then Stephen, as soon as I click this button, I'm going to turn this over to you. And he said we could be brutally honest. So I want you to help us here. So you're on this website, you're excited about supporting Rankin, and you click donate now. And then we go to this page. So Stephen, what are we looking at?
Well, I guess if you think about it from the mind of the donor, giving is a very personal decision. And this feels very transactional, if that makes sense. So right away when I get here, it doesn't look like I'm giving a gift. It feels like I'm filling out a survey, maybe. So you could you could say a lot of things about this page, but the very first thing I would say is that it is not, it's not clear to me who I'm giving to. I know we say Rankin Technical College right there, but that's looks like what I would have on an envelope. It feels like I'm giving to Network for Good. Up at the top, you have nonprofits logged in here. So again, we're not speaking to the donor anymore. We're speaking to a process not a relationship. We have this welcome to Network for Good, sign in to access your profile. There's just so many things that, I can annotate this for you. Questions, membership benefits, that might be useful, but I thought I was donating. Am I signing up for a club? So right away, I would say, if we could get rid of all this, maybe even have the logo of the organization somewhere on the page. Down here, if I'm gonna log in, if we're forcing people to log in, which we shouldn't, why is that down here? Is one of the last things I do. You're asking for a designation sometimes on a general donation page, that's okay, but also, what do I type in there? This is friction. Again, I'm making a decision that I didn't know I was gonna have to make. So that's what I would say about this screen in particular. There's just too much going on that doesn't encourage me to give. And if you remember, we just came from a donation page and all I had was a link to give. I haven't even been persuaded to get here. And once I am here, it's like, well, why should I give? So that's my take on this specific page.
Absolutely. The other thing I would say is I think the words you use matter. So even here it says returning customer login, like donors aren't customers. If anything, they're supporters. I think this idea of like billing information is very interesting. I know we have to collect some of that, but just to lead with billing information it just throws me for a loop too. So those are two other additional things. Megan, anything on your end that stands out here or guidance you would provide?
Yeah, I just echoing that this is, if we're considering that we want to think of a donation as a suggestion we're making as a way for a donor to connect more to meaning, this does not yet deliver. This isn't a continuation of a series of steps. So I think thinking of it in terms of where in the donor journey does this come, and then where is it taking me next? Right now, it feels like it's I'll fill out this form and then it is over. So I think connecting it to that story and to that relationship is important.
Absolutely.
And one thing I'm just seeing kind of in the chat, a few questions coming through is, I'm going to repeat something I said at the beginning, is the standard is not perfection. The standard is improvement. And so when we look at this, one of the questions was like, hey, do you discourage going to a third-party site? Well, I think the testing proves that it's typically better, at least for a general donation page, for it to be embedded or directly on your page, or to at least look like your site. But that's not the first question we need to be asking. When we look at this form and we think about what are the ways we could improve this, I think the number one thing that I see is that this does not feel relational. This feels like I'm buying something. So if we could just hack away at making this better, that would be like coming with that mentality. How can I make this feel more relational? So for example, Rankin Technical College, what am I giving to? Am I helping students learn? Am I helping faculty get paid? Am I helping a research project? Like, what am I doing? Like, you're just giving me a text box telling me the $10 minimum and it's a bill. Like that, I start there. And I think that's where you can kind of start to feel improvement coming.
Absolutely. Well, let's jump over to another because we have so many to get through. And honestly, for those on the call, we received, I think, almost 40 donation pages, and there's no way we can even come close to going through all of them. So we did pick out a few. We do plan on continuing to do and have these conversations. So if we don't pick you, don't take it offensively, but we'd be happy to give you direct feedback outside of these calls or on a future call. So let's jump over to another one. There was 2 pages submitted by the Freedom Story. I'm going to start with this one, which is their Join the Freedom chapter. And so, when you come here to Freedom Story and you click Give, the primary ask is to join the Freedom chapter. So Stephen, what do you think about this page? What are you seeing that comes straight off the top? Even good or bad?
Well, just contextually, I guess we're assuming that they know what Join the Freedom chapter means. Because if you don't have an understanding of that, this can be a little confusing. Again, I would say, if we're trying to give them to give a donation, I would remove the navigation. I would get to, I don't have any problem with lots of content on a page, but here we have a very large image at the top of the screen that says Join the Freedom chapter. If we're thinking about giving as a relational, as personal, Join the Freedom chapter isn't speaking to me, it's speaking to you. One of the biggest mistakes and the easiest mistakes, and this is true for for-profits too, is that we tend to talk about ourselves too much. And in the context of giving, we want to talk about the donor. We want to make them kind of the hero of this story. And so be part of their next chapter. That's fine. This feels like I'm buying something, like I'm buying software, but I get it. It's a chapter. We're joining a membership thing. But when we get here, I feel like this is when the form really starts cooking. This is pretty nice. There's a lot of things that are nice here. That doesn't mean that I couldn't make suggestions, but just here on the left, join a community of like-minded advocates to protect children in vulnerable situations. I like that because it's speaking to me as the donor. What is my gift going to do? Why should I participate? Why should I join this chapter? And so then we have, when we hear about the vast scale of child trafficking and how awful it is for children, we can feel overwhelmed and powerless to stop it. I like that. Even though they're using the word we, we're talking about we as the collective donors. So that's one thing I would suggest is when you get on a value proposition, if you start thinking about how you communicate, try to talk about things from the donor's perspective, not the organization's perspective. So I really like this part right here. If this is where the form started, I think it would be better. On the form itself, when you look at something here, the employer match, that's great. Sometimes it's better if you can do that after the fact rather than during the process, but that's fine too. Down here, the only thing I would say is the cover donation fees. Maybe that language could be improved or removed, but the join a freedom chapter. One of the lifebloods of any nonprofit organization is that monthly giving. And so this is a little tricky what I'm about to say because we're on a page that's about the freedom chapter. But that doesn't necessarily, that's internal language, if that makes sense. Joining a freedom chapter is language that the freedom story understands, not necessarily the donor. And I know it says parentheses recurring, but why are we being unclear? If we talk about points of friction, there is some confusion friction being introduced here. Whereas why don't we just say, make a monthly gift to help freedom chapter. Like there's ways that we can be more clear there. I'm not going to get too prescriptive because I don't have the perfect solution, but I would say that's where friction is possibly introduced to this process. But I mean, this is pretty solid. I think it obviously could be improved, but it's worth experimenting. Small little low-hanging fruit like that. Is that helpful?
Absolutely. I think there's some questions in the chat that I just want to address really quickly. Someone said, should the button say give or donate? Someone else said, should you auto check the cover donation fees and force people to opt out? These are some of these like nuanced questions. I think like any general feedback to kind of all of these, like,
Yeah. Well, when we did our donation page study in 2019, we saw that 65% of organizations were using the words donate or donate now or give now. So it's pretty common language. I don't think that there's necessarily anything bad about using the words donate now or give now because they're so common. Some people get more creative, like donate now to help save children. That's fine too. It's better usually than something like submit, just from a relational perspective. I don't know if there's any research showing that improves or discourages conversion. The donor covers the processing fees. We've chatted about this before. Raise Donors offers that feature too. It's a little bit tricky for me because I get why an organization would introduce that on their form. We have customers that do it all the time. There hasn't been any definitive research that shows that this increases or decreases giving. There's definitely research that shows that people use or don't use it. But a lot of times I would think maybe I was going to give $100, but now I'm going to give a little less so that I can help cover those fees. But what I really don't like about it, if I'm going to say I don't like it, is that it introduces transaction. It introduces this transactional nature to the donation. And I'm doing something, but now all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's this transactional feel that I didn't want. I'm introducing kind of this psychological decision friction. Should I do it? Should I not do it? I didn't know I was going to have to make this decision. Am I a bad person if I don't cover it, or are they asking too much? I generally advise, hey, skip it, skip it if you want, but that's not prescription. I don't have any evidence to tell you that it's good or bad. I just think it introduces a transactional feel to what should be a giving feel.
Absolutely. We can definitely come back to covering donation fees in the future. I think it's a hugely debatable topic. I know personally, when I was running fundraising, we never had this option introduced. Like, we assumed that it was the cost of doing business, which was covering those transaction fees on our side. We'd rather focus on optimizing the gift amount and personalizing the gift amount to the donor than getting a couple more percentage points over their donation. I would rather someone say, hey, I want to give $200 and I came here to give $100 than give $100 and pay 4%, 2%, one, whatever the number is. Again, it's just like, let the donor make a single decision. So that's just my personal take on it. I have no research backing whether that's a good decision or bad decision. Again, a lot of this stuff comes back to testing within your own context. So donate now versus give now, test it if you have the ability to do that. Let's jump over to some more. We have about 5 minutes left. All right. We're going to move a little bit quicker. Franciscan Media, grateful for Ray and his team. They join almost every week. So thanks, Ray. Any quick takes here, Stephen?
Yeah, this is the one that I saw where I could see quick, you could have this improved by the end of the day. One, I would take it out of the frame of the website, get rid of the navigation, give me some value, give me a few sentences, something that tells me why I should give Franciscan Media. As you go down the form here, we have this, if you click on make a recurring gift, click that little checkbox. The gift frequency appears below another decision. That should appear in the context, just from a psychological perspective. I'm going to make a recurring gift. You're going to ask me to make another decision. Bring it up. Bring it right where I'm making that decision. Don't confuse me, because that's confusion friction. Donor pays costs. Again, it's not about whether you should or shouldn't use it, but that language. What? Again, think of it from the mind of your donor. What does that mean? Donor pays costs. Suddenly you've depersonalized this. Now I'm just a donor. I'm not Stephen anymore. So right there. Those changes, I think this form will improve significantly.
Absolutely. And I think even just another quick take here is this is a submit button, which is very clear. But is that the right thing? There's arguments on what that actually say. But I think even just making it a little bit more donor-centered and aligned with this would be better than what it is. But Ray and your team, I know you guys are working on this really well to try to improve it. But even these quick takes, like Stephen said, and for everyone else that's on this call, there's changes you can make this week that will have a positive impact on at least the donor's experience. Then you can begin to evaluate and optimize. I think the one mistake you make is, and some people already brought it up in the chat, is what's the brilliant, the most brilliant version of our donation page? What's like the Cadillac, or in the modern age, like the Tesla version of our donation page? What should that look like? And I think in some ways, now that I use this analogy, it is more of like a Tesla, where it's constantly updating. It's constantly getting better over time. And making small changes and adjusting from there is probably a better approach than spending 3 months in the boardroom or Zoom chat or Zoom call trying to figure out what the most optimal donation page is for our organization. Yeah. Let's jump over to another. We have Esperanza, Esperanza. Quick takes here, Stephen, Megan.
Same thing, navigation. Let's add some value. But I think what we're seeing here is some just kind of field layout friction. If you look at this, it's obviously there may be constraints from within the giving process, but I think if you look at this, the United States, the address, the city, this could all be arranged in a way that is going to produce less mental friction in the eye of the donor. Because right now I'm making judgments about this organization just based on the layout. Fix the layout, and now we're back. Over here on the credit card form, that field, scroll up a little bit, because they have the credit card number and the expiration date just kind of running into each other. There's just little improvements that I'm sure can be addressed by somebody. Down at the bottom, I'd get rid of all that footer information. These are all just exit points. Get rid of the navigation, get rid of these exit points. We want people to focus on making a gift. The more reasons we give them to leave, the worse. So we could talk about CAPTCHA some other time. There's reasons for or against that. I think usually you don't want that there, but there's reasons it might need to be there, at least temporarily. For sure. But yeah, those are my hot takes right there on this page.
Yeah, the other thing I saw down here is when you scroll to the bottom and you click become a monthly donor, and I click donate, I come back to this page. And I think one thing that I would recommend is that if you have a page, if you're asking someone to donate monthly, make it easy. I actually don't even know how I can make this, I guess clicking here, but I just chose to click on a button that said give monthly, and now I come to a form, and now I have to choose again to give monthly, but I may easily skip over this box.
You're
So
experiencing multiple levels of friction.
yeah, some of this stuff I think is technical because the platform limitations are likely there. But again, we have to start with the ideal donor experience and work backwards. I think that's something, Steve and Megan and I talked about before this call, is that with your donation platform, and again, we're biased here at Virtuous and Raise Donors, so take this for what it is. But what is important is that the vendor you choose or the technology you choose to use here doesn't just impact you and your nonprofit team. Like, you're passing that decision on to the donor. And there's very few technical decisions, like whether you use a Mac or a PC, or you use Office or Google Docs, or you use some accounting software or this accounting software, or even this nonprofit CRM or this nonprofit CRM. Those decisions don't necessarily bleed into the donor experience in the same way that your donation platform or your online fundraising platform does. Like, what you choose determines what's possible. And that's a big thing that I know we talk about a lot here at Virtuous. And, Stephen, you and Raise Donors have focused on this a lot because you want to make sure it's about the donor and the nonprofit experience, not the platform.
Yeah, one thing, I just got a chance to catch up on some of these. Tim was saying that we also found recently that if we do not have CAPTCHA, our server was overwhelmed with attacks. And that's the number one reason that you would use CAPTCHA. But just of note with that, so the way, I'm not saying this to sell Raise Donors, this is just the way Raise Donors handles it, is that the CAPTCHA is triggered when it detects fraudulent activity, like an attack. So by default, a donation form doesn't need to have those CAPTCHAs if you have your security protocols kind of set up a certain way. So the CAPTCHA and other protocols can be activated to protect not only your site, but the platform itself. So if you're on a platform that's forcing you to use the CAPTCHA, find out if there's flexibility in that, because the way ours works is it turns on and then it's on for 8 hours or a couple days or whatever it is, and then it deactivates again. Because those attacks are real and they can cost you not only a lot of time in trying to sort out the transaction, but cost, because even those declines can have a transaction fee at your gateway. So it's a really big thing, and it's a balance. The CAPTCHA is a perfect example, because optimally we would not have that on any donation form at any time, but it serves a purpose. And so life, like everything else, is about balance, and you have to find that balance.
So unfortunately, we're at time, but Stephen and Megan, if you have 2 or 3 more minutes, I want to run through these last few donation pages. We have this one from Community Housing Works. Stephen, any commentary here?
Generally, it's a really nice looking form. I would just say, where's the value? If I land here, like, why should I give to Community Housing Works? If we can add some content there, something that motivates me more than just the form, give me some value, because this form is all cost. When you compare cost value, this is all cost. You're asking me for things. How can we increase the value so that friction is worth my time?
Absolutely. I think it just, looking at this, feels taxing. One thing I think Stephen Screen at the Better Fundraising Group always talks about is we need to evaluate the tax we're requiring, or the education tax we're requiring our donors to pay before they actually make a donation. And I think this is a great example where I'm like, okay, I have to read the terms and conditions. Again, select a campaign. Like, we should be able to absolutely do this automatically based on where they came from. It feels a little overwhelming, and I think that's something to keep in mind. Here's another one from One Vision. Lots of text, so they met that quota.
Well, it's not just the words. We want to use the right words. But here I pulled the navigation out. I pull out the sidebar, the search box, everything. So let's just focus on the form. Let's think about the words. Always use language that is donor focused, not organization focused. If you look at this right here, we're talking about, hey, this is tax deductible. We're a 501c3. Okay, so is every other organization that I want to give to. Let's focus on why I would specifically give to you. Then we get to this form. I think if you want to think just strategically, when we think about kind of field layout friction, there's some value in making this feel quicker. So every line, last name, address, city. There are opportunities to put, hey, city and state maybe on the same line, and zip code. There's ways to make this feel less taxing, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think too, like, one thing that we've seen is that for basically your everyday donors, like, providing suggested amounts is the best practice. Here at Virtuous, we actually do dynamic gift arrays where we actually recommend based on previous gift amounts. So if you are using Virtuous, you're able to actually send someone to a donation page, And my donation recommended query might be different than Megan's, or Finn's 10,000. He would actually come and see an open text box. One thing that is best practices for everyday donors, those kind of low mid-tier donors, you want to provide suggested amounts that align with previous gifts. With large donors, you actually want to take away the choices and just give them an open box and let them be
some really good experiments that back up that point, for sure.
So Mercy for Animals.
Here, this is a pretty nice form. You've got the image, which I think is very effective because it's driving home the point. It's telling the story without interfering with the process. I like that they're focusing on the value proposition. You've got the amounts. What I really like, if I was going to compliment this page, is it's encouraging me to make a monthly gift, but with a purpose, not just, hey, how often would you like to give? Well, I haven't told you I want to give yet. So, they're telling me why that monthly gift will benefit, why it's more valuable to them than even one time. I like that it changes the giving amounts based on one time or monthly. So yeah, I'm sure there's some things that could be improved. The value proposition could probably be tighter, but I think this is a really solid experience.
Yeah, and someone was talking about removing the navigation. This is a perfect example. Like there's only one way out of this page, and that's making a donation.
Mm-hmm.
This one here, OCRA.
Yeah, generally it's just fine. If you go up here though, this is a small thing, but make your urgently gift now, and then we have, hey, please use the form if you want to send by mail. I get why you might put that, but again, this is why am I sending people away? Why am I giving them an exit ramp? Why am I letting them press the eject button? It's the same principle as we have for removing the navigation. We're here to give a gift. If you want to put this somewhere, I guess you could put it in the footer or put it somewhere else on your website. But let's get to the point. Let's focus on the value and make this simple. Remember that the formula we're looking for is a good message and a simple process. Work on those two things. You work on it this week. Next week you can make it even better. Remember, we're always wanting to improve. So I think right here, the biggest takeaway would be that content, the area and the value proposition. Work on that and just focus on the gift, not everything else they could possibly do.
Well, I think that's all the time we have. There was a few other examples, but we'll be able to get into these in the weeks to come. Some great examples, very different. Like this one's obviously structured very differently. Mm-hmm. And then even other ones here where this is more of like a donation process that takes you through and starts powering like this. So lots of different options. I think what's interesting here, again, goes back to what you said at the top of the hour is how do you remove friction and how do you reinsure or reinforce the value proposition of making a donation? Stephen, any other final words before we close? We're already 10 minutes over.
Just the same thing. The goal is not perfection. The goal is progress. So don't beat yourself up over anything. If you think your form stinks, that's not the point. Make it better. It's an opportunity, really.
Absolutely. Stephen, always grateful to have your time. Megan, it's always a pleasure to see you every week on today's call. Thank you so much to the audience for being here around. For those that submitted their pages and we didn't get to them, again, we're going to try to do this again with Stephen, get more time. And also talk about what happens after you make a donation. We're talking about the front end of the process, and one of our attendees already said, well, what should we do after someone makes a donation? So that's going to be a topic that we're going to be bringing back to the table to talk about in the coming weeks is what now? You got someone to donate, then what? What should be on the thank you page? How should you thank them? All of those tips will come back. Megan, that's it. We did it.
Thanks to everybody who was so brave and sent us their stuff. That's a big thing to do, and we really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your week.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we'll send the follow-up, the recording. Megan will send some additional resources around this topic. It was definitely of high interest, so we'll be resourcing you all well. Thanks, everybody.
All right.